Hello, and welcome to Wednesday in Westeros. I'm Todd A., and joining me tonight is...
Not Taylor. Oh, wait, no. Emily.
Yep.
Emily Kelly.
Whew. We kicked out those non-reading jerks that join us on our respective podcasts so that we, the book nerds, could nerd out on all the nerd stuff about Game of Thrones, which is like 4 or 5 days away. It's pretty exciting.
It doesn't even seem real to me. Like, I feel like I've waited so long now. Like, I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, it's never coming. So now that it actually is, I'm like, what?
Yeah, we passed by that April deadline where I thought I would feel anxious. And yeah,
I just forgot.
Well, I think I was distracted by the my total irritation with American Gods. So that sustained my irritation for like a month. And then it was, Game of Thrones was almost here. And I was like, oh, cool. We're good. I can get over this. So I thought I would eat. So on this network, or somehow you're listening to some podcast that is called Wednesday in Westeros. It is often me and my co-host Taylor and Emily joins us frequently when she can. But Emily and Peter Cunin host Fan Theories. We did a big Fan Theories Wednesday in Westeros podcast crossover a couple of weeks ago to talk all about these Game of Thrones fan theories. So I'm going to bring one more fan theory to you in this last preview week before the season, which was presented in the form of news with little quotes around it or something, a conjecture, but it was in the digital pages of Vanity Fair by none other than Joanna Robinson, who wondered today if George Martin is secretly done with books 6 and 7. And in her post, she claims that there's a lot, her phrase is something like, there's a lot of evidence that this may have actually happened, that he is secretly done with them. But then I didn't really find her evidence that convincing. It's mostly along the lines of, he has written in his live journal recently, which he had abandoned for a long time.
What?
And the location, I know, no, that's his blog on his site. I know, if you weren't aware,
I didn't.
That's how he has been blogging.
I mean,
the past 10 years.
I think like a better fan theory is like that George R. R. Martin is secretly like a 12-year-old girl from the 90s.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's the last time I really heard of live journal. But okay, sorry. Continue. So, my bad.
And on live journal, which I never used, so I don't really even know this as a thing. But I guess you report your mood when you leave a blog post, and his mood was pleased. So that was one of the evidences. Another was that he really had gone dark, and he hadn't made a lot of convention appearances, and he hadn't been taking on work because he had been saying over and over for the past few years he really needed to just buckle down and finish these books. And now all of a sudden we got this news this week that he's adapting, oh my gosh, I forgot the name of it, a science fiction novel.
I forgot the name of it too.
I know, I feel so terrible about that. And
that's cool though.
And there was some other news that came out, and so it's kind of like, hey, he's coming out of his shell. Oh, and I want to say it was Sir Peter calls him Sir Friendzone, but I call him Jorah Mormont. But I believe that actor may have said something about there's a big secret, or maybe it was the Davos actor said there's a big surprise launch coming soon. And so the conjecture that either that means they will announce the book is out on Sunday when Game of Thrones gets here, or the other idea is that possibly George is going to host the Game of Thrones panel at Comic-Con this year, which is something he did, I guess, in the early days of the show.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I don't really find this evidence convincing that he's finished those books. Taylor and I talked at length about George R. R. Martin's predicament last week on Wednesday in Westeros. But I wondered if you had anything to add, if you actually think that he'll ever finish these, or if he's even working on them. What's your take?
Well, first of all, I like to think of myself as like a poor man's Joanna Robinson, because she knows way more about this stuff and the world of Game of Thrones than I do. But so, hey girl, in my heart of hearts, I know he has the Winds of Winter, because he kept releasing like preview chapters, and this is why I was like so freaking infuriated about Sansa's plot turns in season 5. Of like because of the chapter that he released, she's like in the Eyrie. Sorry, spoilers, everyone.
No, we've talked about it at length.
So she's like in the Eyrie, and they're trying to marry her to Harry the Heir, and she's like happy and like, you know, not married to a psychopath and getting sexually assaulted, and, you know, like she was cool. So when they did that on the show, I was like, but why? Like she has all this other like stuff that he's obviously written for her. Like, why are you doing this? It's out, like, you whatever. But so I know he has that book partially written and at least thought about. So I mean, I hope that that's like this big reveal. That'd be super cool. It'd be super cool, like on Sunday at the end, they're like, you know, we do this commercial break or whatever. There's no commercials on HBO, but of like, you know, Winds of Winter coming Christmas, whatever, you know, like that would be super cool. Of like to just drop that in the middle of the premiere, because I know that just from a marketing standpoint, they would never just like release the book right now because it would take too much away from the show. So if they are going to announce it, it would definitely be like coming soon, you know, coming in a few months, like when the show is done.
I mean, they've got to have a date and a cover. I'm not going to believe it until I see someone with a picture of, of like a galley copy.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, like he could just be pleased, like because he had pizza or something. I don't know, like
exactly.
You know, he could just be. And he's funny about it too. Like he's full on said, like he doesn't know if he's gonna survive to finish these books because he's, you know, what, like 50s, 60s, and has diabetes and stuff. Like he could die. You know, it's stressful being George R. R. Martin. I anticipate. So. I mean, I'm optimistic. Like, I hope he does. But then there's also like, I just got it too. J.R.R. Tolkien, another very similar, you know, the godfather of world building. I mean, they've released his work for years and years and years after his death. You know, his kids finish it, or they leave it unfinished and do a forward and stuff like. So even if he does, you know, never really finish it, I'm sure those books will get finished or at least published in some form or another, whether it's like in his lifetime or like 10 years after the show is like done. We already know the ending of the freaking books. We know who sits the Iron Throne. We know who do the Prince Who's Promised. We know what happens with our favorite ships. You know, who cares? But I don't know, man.
will you like excitedly pick up the new book if and when it ever comes out?
Yeah, I will beat a small child over the head to get that book in the bookstore. Like, actually, I'll just get it on my Kindle. I don't do that anymore. I have a Kindle. Right. But it really reminds me too, and I really feel bad for him, to be honest. Like, I just know as a writer myself, you know, sometimes you get so excited about these characters in this world that you just, you know, he blew through those first 4 or 5 books in like 5 years or something. And then all of a sudden you get busier and it kind of weighs on you a little bit more, and it's harder to write these things. And obviously he's a very busy, much more busy than he was when the first couple of books came out. So I can J.K. Rowling between the 4th and 5th book, I think, was a couple of years, and it was really hard, like coming back into that world just as a reader too. And just you could tell in her writing at the end, you know, it felt harried. Excuse me. It felt like rushed. In a sense, like, shit, I have not written a book in 3 years and I just need to get it out. Like the first whole like 3/4 of the Order of the Phoenix is so good. And then you get to the end and you're like, what? Why do they still win the House Cup and the Quidditch Cup and stuff? This is dumb. Like, I'm so sad. Like, well, I hate this. So
well,
I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I think that the writing was on the wall. Weaker pun even than your harried pun. With those 4th and 5th books, like he definitely kind of lost the plot, and there's that big sort of, isn't there like a long explanatory preface in one of them about like in number 4 about how he had to split the book up and he ended up pulling the chapter. I don't remember. There's this other dude that he took a lot of ideas from, who's oh my gosh, I can't remember that guy. Tad Williamson, maybe. Another author. I'll frantically Google it when you start talking again. But I know he has this trilogy that's very similar to Game of Thrones, and his in one of the books there's a really funny long like author's note about I was gonna stick to a trilogy, but the third book got so out of hand, but he would not allow his publishers to put it out as two separate books. So, but they told him like, we literally can't print this because the spine will fall apart. So he called it one book, but they had to print it as two. And,
that's funny.
I know George Martin has had those same conversations with.
J.R.R. Tolkien too. Like the Lord of the Rings was a single book. It would have been like 3,000 pages or something of a single book. And his publishers, even back then, are like, let's like split it up. We'll split it up into 3. It'll be a trilogy. And so that's why they all got separate names. But they are like not. I mean, they are distinctly. It's basically like a book in 3 acts that they just turned into 3 books.
Yeah,
so,
I always thought I thought he wrote them as 3 separate books.
No, he wanted it to be one book, and his publishers are like, no. Stop.
Yeah. That's too much. I will correct myself. It was Tad Williams, and the trilogy is Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, which is another fantasy trilogy that has similar things about like an orphan in the north and kings and dragons and stuff. Anyway,
they're all basically the same.
Let's jump into the main sort of focus of our podcast tonight, because we're just gonna hammer this out so we can get back to our daily lives and anticipating the show for 5 more days. What have you done to prepare for season 7? Have you rewatched? Have you reread? What's been going on?
Yeah, Peter and I, after doing the fan theories, we were really like, wow, so much has happened like in 6 seasons, even just with 10 episodes each. Like it still feels like a lot has really gone on. And I mean, when we started the series 6 years ago, I mean, that's a lot to remember and think about and stuff. So we actually started our rewatch at season 2. So
nice. Me too.
Yeah. So it's like, because season 1, you kind of, only really one thing happens, you're trying to figure out who killed John Aaron, and like Ned gets his head chopped off, and I have like, it ruined any sense of security in a character in a show that I've ever had. And the funniest part about it too is like, so I didn't read the books like before I started to watch the show. Like I only started to read the books in like season 2 or 3, I think. And so, but I had a friend who's been reading them for like 10 years or like 15 years whenever they first came out. And so when I texted her like after the first season, she just like laughs. She's like, ha ha ha, you don't even know. Like, so we started in season 2 where we have not we've not even like gotten into season 4, I don't think, or maybe we just got into season 4. So we still have a bit to catch up. Like we'll just kind of continue it through season 7. But it is funny, like how many more things you notice, about knowing what's happening now and knowing what has happened, the little clues and the looks and the George R.R. Martin is very particular in the words that he puts in people's mouths.
Right. Yeah.
And very always putting clues here and there for things. So it's been fun. I really liked it. It's kind of funny too, like so many of them are like, especially in season 2, they're like BBs. Like they look so young, especially like Arya looks so young. And then like getting it, especially like Sansa too looks quite young. And then you get into like season 6 and you're just like, wow, like you're a woman now, Sansa. John too is like baby face, like in season 2.
Yeah, totally. This is why I had such trouble with what was the whole fanship we talked about with Arya, where I was like, oh, Gendry and Arya, and I was like, no way, too young.
Yeah, and he's like, even like in season 2 or 3 or whatever, where they're gonna go to the Night's Watch, and then they're like with the Brotherhood without banners. He has like no shirt on. And you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. But Arya's like a girl. She has no interest in men yet, but it was just I understood a little bit better now, but. I mean, out of all the ships, like it's probably the least gross, considering it's like brothers and sisters, cousins, nephews and aunts, you know, an older blacksmith kid and a younger little fighty murderer kid. Like, I don't know. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. When there's no familial relations involved,
Yeah.
that's maybe the best we can hope for in Game
Yeah.
of Thrones. Yeah, I too did a rewatch. I started just doing last season, and then I ended up going back to 2 because I felt the same way you did. Like, it's. I mean, I would probably sit down and watch 1 with no problem, but it just felt like it was going to be a push. And starting with 2, I was in it like immediately.
Yeah.
And I did make it through, you know, all the way through 5. I did skip the 1 episode with Sansa and Ramsay's wedding night.
It's my least favorite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm with you on like all the stuff you pick up. And Taylor and I talked about a little bit last week about how the showrunners have done this. Like, I can kind of appreciate all those moments where I was frustrated as a reader watching, you know, the seasons that were on book. I can kind of appreciate what the showrunners were doing, which was they knew the end goal and they had to service this plot all along. So it's like, I can kind of see, like, you know, they kept the pieces moving in the right direction, even if they had to like change them a little bit. And that, I don't know, it gave me a better appreciation for that, but it also gave me a much harsher view of season 5 as a whole, because I think previously I thought season 4 was also kind of shaky, but having rewatched it, I was like, holy shit, no, that whole season was so solid and crazy. Like, so many important deaths, you know, Oberyn and Tywin and Joffrey, and like so much crap happens in that. And then 5 is like a real like letdown, you know, the whole thing. So not that, I mean, there's really good parts of it, but the whole tone changes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I totally, as soon as we, like, how I got into the show was like before season 2, we were like, it was like Easter weekend. We're like, let's watch the show that everyone's talking about. You know, we'll watch the first season before season 2 premiere, and then watch season 2 premiere. And so when season 5, like I forget whatever the wedding episode is, like maybe the 3rd or 4th episode.
Actually, I think it's like the 5th one. I think it's right in the middle.
Okay. I had to take a break. Like, I had to take like 2 weeks off from watching the live show.
And you're talking about the Sansa Ramsay wedding night.
Because I was just like too disturbed by the whole thing. And I mean, I'm not alone. A lot of people boycotted the show after that.
I stopped watching that whole season until the whole thing was done after that episode. Yeah.
We took like a 3-week break, I think. So we came in, we binged like before the last 2 episodes, but I needed like a breather. And so, but I think too, like, that's when season 6 came out. It sucks that all these really bad violence against women and sexual violence plots have to happen. You know, they don't have to happen is the most horrible thing about it. But it really does. Season 6 really made me not appreciate it, but, you know, you can't have the light without the dark. You know, if Sansa hadn't gone through everything that she, as much as Sansa had already gone through so much horrifying stuff, for her to finally get that, like, that moment of where she has finally come into her own and gotten revenge, and not just revenge on Ramsay Bolton, but kind of revenge on anyone who has doubted her and anyone who tried to hurt her in past seasons. It made it so much more gratifying, I think. And Brienne too. I mean, there's a lot of really, Dany, you know, there's a lot of really good storylines in season 6 that hopefully will carry through into season 7, because I would hope that the showrunners and the writers, you know, they kind of learned from that dark place that was season 5. But yeah, the thing, I mean, we're kind of getting on a tangent. I'm sorry, but
no, this is all about tangents.
The thing that I was really the most surprised about in my rewatch was how fucking cold Arya was, like, from the get-go.
Oh my god! No
like,
kidding.
and I forgot about like all the just like
all the
really
dudes that she killed.
Yes, all the because I don't think she murders that many people in the books. Like I'm pretty sure she murders like one person, like before she goes to the faceless men and stuff. So it was just so there's like one where her and the Hound and they go and it's like the
I'm sure I know exactly. I'm
Oh
thinking
my
of the
God.
same one.
Yeah, and it's I think his name is Polliver. I think it's the same one. And he goes like, oh no, it's a different guy. So it's like a different guy with Polliver, and the Hound asks her like, is this guy on your list? And she's just like standing there, sort of like just so cold faced. And she just goes, no, because I don't know his name. And then he asks, so what's your name?
Yes.
And then she just stabs him through the heart. And then because the Hound had said like, this is where the heart is, like before in the episode, she stabs the guy through the heart. And he goes, he doesn't even like yell or like is like disgusted about it. He just goes, you're learning. Like it was such a but she just like wipes her sword and just like moves on. Like I forgot like that she was so just like a stone cold little killer. I forgot how cool she was in like these early. I mean, she's still cool. She's super cool now, but I forgot really even before she got to the faceless men, just like how baller she was.
That was shocking. I was sure though that the one you were going to mention was where they're riding. It's after the Red Wedding, and they pass these three like Freys or whatever that are sitting around the fire. And she just jumps off the horse and then like does this like kind of like innocent act of like where she just wants to have some food, and she holds this coin out, and the Bravosi coin, and the guy's like, that, you know, that doesn't look, that's not a coin or whatever, and she drops it and then just stabs him in the face or something. Oh my God, it's so shocking.
I like to like ever so slowly the Hound, like I mean you can tell like at first it's just for the money, like he really just wants to like get rid of her, like sell her for the money to her aunt or her mom or whatever. And so, but then you can kind of tell, like, as soon as she jumps off the horse, he's like, oh, God damn it. Like, what is she going to do this time? Like, she's going to get hurt. There's three of them, but she just murders them. Like, it was really cute. And then especially with the Hound and Brienne, when, you know, Brienne's like, so what are you taking care of her? And he says, yes. And like, maybe he's being disingenuous, but you kind of feel like he thinks that way too. One of the other thing about my rewatch, because we just had this episode like a couple episodes ago, when he and Brienne get into the fight and he's like dying and Arya leaves him there. And he's like, God, like a gut punch, but he's like saying all these things. And maybe I was just like too into Brienne kicking ass at the time to like really notice it. But so that's what it's like going back and rewatching is so important, because you really notice things that maybe you were like too hyped to notice the first time. So, but he's like telling Arya all these mean things, like that he should have hurt Sansa, and that he like liked killing her friend, all this stuff. But you can just tell, and this is like just a credit to the actor too. You can just tell like this, there's such a softness in his face that has nothing to do with being hurt. Like that it's just that he doesn't believe any of these things. You know, he's just a product of his environment and having a horrible brother and father and stuff, that it hurts him to say these kinds of things, but it's the only way he thinks that she'll get to, you know, that she'll kill him.
Yeah, that she'll kill him and give him that mercy. Yeah, is that moment too, where she walks off, was so much colder on my rewatch, because I just watched the whole season of them sort of forming that bond. And I think just having that gap between 4 and 5, or I guess she leaves him in 5. I think
4. I think it's 4.
Is it 4? Well,
it's like at the end of 4.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's when she goes down to the ships and.
Yeah.
Oh my God, she's been in Bravos for 2 years. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I might be. Yeah, I think season 4, because Joffrey's dead. Yeah, I know. Season 5 was like really. It was like it felt longer than.
I know. It's so weird to try to piece it together, because also in season 5 is where we didn't even see Bran and Hodor the whole season.
Oh yeah, that they were just.
So that was another reason it was like kind of dark. There just wasn't anyone learning their new skills. It was just people dying.
By the way, if you guys listen to the fan theories, Todd's favorite fan theory was that Bran eats Jojen. And so when we got to that part where he dies, we were laughing so hard.
I was like, when I rewatched his death, I was like, wait, so do they just eat the bones? Go back for the meat.
Yeah. Because like the children of the child of the forest like firebombs him or whatever. But we were just laughing so hard. Like I'm cry laughing right now, just like thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, the show pretty much dispenses with that theory, but Brand definitely eats Jojen in the books.
Yeah, but I think I kind of want to hope so. Yeah. Besides watching the show again, obviously I'm not going to get cut off. I was rereading like the end of A Dance of Dragons too, because I'd read it like 2 years ago, and so it's like,
oh wow.
Yeah, most of the plots in the books have come to pass, but there was still like some Greyjoy stuff that I needed to catch up on and some Bran stuff. And then the stabbing of Jon, like at the very end of the book.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's a great segue for my next question. Okay. But just to start with that death of Jon, I remember basically grudge reading those two books at the same time that my friend Meg, whom I've mentioned on this podcast before, because she's the one who recommended the books to me. We were basically in the same spots for those books, but she finished 5 like a week or so before I did. So, she's kind of like texting me all week, like, what point are you? What's happened? And I describe it to her. And then I just get to that point and I text her like in the middle of the night, like, what the fuck? She's like, oh, yeah, you finished. And I do remember in season 5 after, because I'd stopped watching after the Sansa rape scene. I was like, I'm too close to this show right now. Yeah. I'll just wait till all the episodes are out and then I'll watch them, hoping that it would kind of redeem itself for that bad choice. So then I had friends who watched the last episode when Jon gets stabbed, and then they're all texting me, what the fuck? And I thought, like, this is so perfect. It all comes around,
Yeah, that's what I did too. Like, I wasn't done with it. I maybe started it. I don't remember when season 5 came out. So yeah, so when that episode happened, I think we watched it like later at night. Like we didn't start it like right at 9. Like we started it at 10 or something. So it's like 11 or like midnight at night. And so like I said, I have one friend, Becca, who had read the books like a long time ago before the show came out. And then I had another friend, Casey, who had read them just before the show and then kind of like concurrent with the show. And so I texted both of them like at whatever 11 or like, no, like, what the fuck? Is Jon dead? Like, he can't be dead, right? Like, he's gonna come back. Like, what the? How would they do that? And so they were like both like laughing, like, oh, because she hadn't watched. One of them hadn't watched the episode, and so she's like, oh, did that happen on the episode? And then they were like both like yeah, in the book. So I'm like, what happens like in the book? Like, does he come back? And like, no, we don't know. Like, this is like the end of like it's like the end of the map, right? Like, there be monsters. Like, they didn't know either. This was the first time that they didn't like know what would happen. And that was kind of like the fun part of the show too, of like for longtime book readers, like you're finally getting to find out some of this stuff. And obviously it's not totally aligned with what the book, with what Winds of Winter might have, but you can trust that George has told the showrunners basically what will happen. So, but still it was like, I felt bad for like, what the mother? Well, Jon can't be dead.
When I made my when I broke up with the show during that season, and some of my friends, just thought I was being a whiner about it or something, or too sensitive, and I knew in the back of my head, I kept thinking like, yeah, but you don't know what I know.
You don't even know.
And so I just like, I had such like a schadenfreude kind of thing in the back of my head of like, oh, I'll know when you hit the last episode. Oh, I'll hear about it.
That's what my friend meant.
I still have one thing to lord over you.
When Ned dies, and she's like, you don't even know.
Yeah.
Every character you like will probably die at some point, or get stabbed, or like threatened with death. Okay, like this is what it is to be a Game of Thrones fan.
Right, exactly. Well, that was my next big question was, is there anything that we as book readers know that has not yet been revealed that we can talk about, either in like guarded code words or but I mean mostly it's just to pick your brain, because I think that all that we've seen are little there's all these little side stories and stuff, and the showrunners have really done I mean, they've really done a good job, because 4 and 5, those books wander like crazy.
Yeah.
So the
There's a
showrunners have
lot
really,
of like, minor characters with like really bitty subplots and stuff.
yeah. Or like,
Yeah.
so Taylor has this funny thing where he's basically cheated. So when he's watching the show, he'll like go to a wiki of Ice and Fire or something and read.
Oh yeah.
So he feels like he's gotten the book background. He's supplementing it. So on our last podcast, I did not correct him when he said this. I had mentioned that Lady Stoneheart shows up to hang Brienne, or she does hang Brienne after she's shown up, which actually you had mentioned on the Fan Theories crossover podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Taylor didn't actually know the reasoning behind that, so it's things like that. Like he just knew that detail happened in the book. So I think he actually thinks Brienne is maybe dead. Sorry, Taylor, I didn't correct you on that. But so I think there's little things like that. Like there are these side quests where Brienne and Pod have then traveled, and do they meet the grave digger? I don't even know, but we think that might be the Hound, and they've already brought the Hound back. Yeah. So we know that whole side plot's going to disappear. And it's just things like that. Like these details have become more and more superfluous as the show.
Yeah. And I feel like it's not so much like that there's things in the books that haven't yet happened in the show. It's more like there's things in the books that will probably never happen in the show, which is really a bummer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's so many, like, one of my favorite characters in the book, and she's kind of minor, but like the storyline was super cool, was Ariane Martell.
Right.
So she's the eldest child of Doran Martell. And I don't know why I think they just kind of like made Elia and the Sand Snakes more important in lieu of her. Like, I don't know why, because she's super a cool character. And I think too, I mean, it was mostly that Marcella shows up so very briefly. She shows up a little bit more in the books, but I was really bummed that she never, and like the time has passed at this point because Marcella is dead. But she was super cool because it was like this whole other like subplot of like, well, if Marcella gets married to Tristan, and then in Dorne, the ascension to the throne is chronological, like not gender based. So the Dornish could fight to put Marcella on the Iron Throne instead. There's like this whole like larger throwing the Martell hat in the ring a bit more than it does. Now they've kind of like come full circle with it there was another like side subplot of another Dornish Martell. One of the middle son of Doran was going to go to try to marry Daenerys, and he gets there and Dany's like, no, thank you. Like, you seem like a nice kid, but you're not really my type. Like, sail away, please.
Yeah. And there's the little Aegon plot or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talk about that. My laundry alarm's going off. Let me turn this off. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah. So the other like big book plot that is missing is, so we talked a lot about this on Fan Theories of like, who is the third head of the dragon, because now it's been confirmed, and I will fight anyone who says it's not confirmed, that Jon is physically fight me. I'm Irish. I'm very scrappy, always ready to fight. That Jon is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. So that he is kind of this last, one of the last Targaryens along with Daenerys. So that, and in the books, they make a sort of like hush hush subtle sort of point of putting, it's Tyrion, right? He's the one on the boat. Yeah. So when he's traveling, like he escaped
with this kid.
Yeah. So he's like, just as like Varys like smuggles him out, they go on like this riverboat, like through Old Volantis and like up into Essos and stuff. And so they go on the boat, and there's like this young man and his quote unquote dad, but they look nothing alike. So that's sort of laughable. And so the young man has like violet eyes and ice blonde hair, just like Dany. And so that you kind of get this impression, and I think they actually come out and say it at one point, like that there is rumors that before the sack of King's Landing during Robert's Rebellion, when the Mountain supposedly kills Elia Martell's kids, the young prince, that they smuggle him out, and that it's actually like a different baby, like that he just killed a random baby. And so that Varys helped smuggle him out. And that has put him on this, path to just being like a normal person, to hide him. And that potentially that this young Aegon is the third head of the dragon. But even in the books, it's sort of unclear where he fits, but maybe in the next 2 books, he would have a much more prominent role. But again, I think that time has kind of passed.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it definitely has. They circumvented all that when Jorah kidnaps Tyrion.
Yeah.
And that whole ride doesn't happen. And there's that whole character, and which I'll John Connington or something is also on the boat with them. It's literally just hundreds of pages of Tyrion playing Sivos, which is this chess game with this kid.
Yeah. And so but that's really the only other thing. And that, well, the only thing that I can think of now, but I don't think it'll come to pass because of the events of season 6, was that Euron Greyjoy was also like, I'm gonna sail across the sea and like marry that dragon lady.
Yep.
And then we don't know if he really did or not. He really what happened with that. So, but I think now that Dany is with Theon and Yara,
right,
he probably will not. I mean, he made it seem though, like, to be honest, he was like, she will marry me or else. So maybe even if she's aligned with his niece and nephew, he will still think like, we're going to get married.
Well, he does say that in the show. And then Yara tells Daenerys something. I think in their conversation, she says something about that to her.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. That's
to kind of put her on her side, on their side, you know, like he's coming over here to just claim you. It's, but honestly,
Danny's like, good luck.
You're totally right. There's more stuff that we know from the books that is not, like, decisively not going to happen because, for example, like Tyrion hasn't even met Daenerys in the books, which shocked me to relearn that fact. So you can tell, like, if the showrunners are taking their cues from like an outline that, you know, Martin gave them, they've already passed like everything that, you know, that is in the books. Yeah. But well past it. So, what, you know, with that, given that in mind, like what you know from the books and everything else we've talked about, what are you most anticipating for this season? Is there anything you really want to see happen?
Well, I know because of screenshots or set photos that Dany and Jon meet finally. So they meet what it looks to be is perhaps Eastwatch by the sea, which is it's like the port on the very edge of the wall. But it could be wrong. It's kind of hard to tell, but that would be the most logical sort of area for them to meet probably. So I'm really, and that the Stark children, that finally Arya comes home, you know, that finally Arya and Sansa are back together in Winterfell, and that Bran also tries to make it there as well. And then Jon, I mean, we can count him, I suppose, but he is half Stark. Yeah. But I mean, I don't want to like pull away from like the main, the other points that you are anticipating, but just as a side note, I know we talked about the sort of Daenerys Jon ship in the Fan Theories podcast. And I later on remembered this thing that I think I know. So can you confirm that either in the books or the show, hasn't someone explained to Daenerys that she will never bear any more children? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So it was like,
she is the last of the Targaryen line, in other words.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's kind of sad, to be honest. I mean, it's really sad for her. That's what she always thought to kind of, the last dragon. So it's you kind of maybe want to root for Jon to be with someone else, I suppose, that he could kind of carry on the line. Not as, whatever, quote unquote, purely as Daenerys with that silver hair and the violet eyes, but that she, after she lost the baby, from magic and stuff, they have said, that she can't ever have kids. So that's like her thing. So in the book, she it's like a monologue because it's written in her perspective. She talks very openly that any marriage that she has doesn't really have to be like for love. Like she definitely loves other people she could love again, but that it would be more of a political marriage. Like she thinks about marrying, he has a really complicated name. Hizdar
Zolorak. Yes.
Yeah. Like, oh, maybe I'll marry him. But he's cute enough, I suppose, but she doesn't really like care so much about finding a
Right.
husband and having children. You know, she's solely focused now on taking back what she thinks is hers, and that's the Iron Throne of Westeros. So I hope in season 7 it'll be, I think season 7 unfortunately will be a lot of setup for season 8. I don't think we'll see a lot of like the final good versus evil battle of, you know, the White Walkers versus the living until season 8.
That's what Taylor thinks.
Yeah, because I mean, it just kind of makes sense, like from a, you know, a good writing standpoint. Like you want to save that kind of stuff for the very end. But so I think a lot of it will be set up and kind of tying up a lot of loose ends, which is totally fine. Like that's going to be cool. I think we're going to see probably half of the deaths that we saw like coming up. Like a lot of people will survive till the end, like into season 8, but I think we'll still see some pretty significant deaths in season 7 to set up for season 8 of, you know, who's going to be on the Iron Throne and who's going to lead the army of the living. And yeah, it's kind of hard. You know, it's funny too. Like it's so hard to guess at this point because we really are in uncharted territory. But that's the only thing I can really think of, like that probably we won't see very many epic battles like we did Battle of the Bastards until more towards season 8.
Right. And I think what I'm anticipating, even though I want to see big battles and, you know, big computer animated dragons and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm primarily like interested in anticipating like how are they actually going to move all these pieces around the board now, because like you mentioned, if Jon and Daenerys meet up at Eastwatch on the Sea, I wonder, is that going to be like if that scene or those set photos, is that an episode that is very near the end of the season? Because I would hope that she lands at Dragonstone and at least sort of lands in the middle of Westeros to begin,
that's true,
actually sort of conquering things. And when we've seen the Dothraki horde running across the, you know, the plains, it's definitely like the plains. It's not the snowy north. And there's a crazy battle that we've seen like a hint of with the Circle of Men, where it's like Jon and the Brotherhood Without Banners and Beric and the Hound are with him. And I'm very interested in that. And, you know, what exactly is going on there? Because I kind of hope we do get a lot of battles with the White Walkers. I hope that's happening this season. I know that it can't be the big, you know, end all be all, but I don't know.
We're kind of in a funny place too. Yeah, like plot wise, they have to solve the problem of the infighting in Westeros first, before they can solve the problem of, you know, ultimate death, ultimate winter. So I think like that's kind of what I mean of like loose ends. Like you kind of have to, you know, Cersei will probably have to die probably towards the end, because they'll need someone on the Iron Throne who can pledge troops to fight the dead, you know, to fight the winter. And there's still a lot of people in play. Of the Dornish are now in it, and Highgarden's just had both of its heirs murdered. Like there's a lot of things that still need to like be addressed in season 7 before we can even like get to, I mean, the White Walkers aren't even like at the wall so much yet. Like they're not like banging on it like, hello, we're ready to conquer Westeros yet.
Well, I have a question about that though. So having freshly rewatched this, rewatched the episode called Hard Home, season 5, which was, you know, before Jon gets murdered, he leads this wildling troop to Hardhome so that they can rescue as many wildlings. But it's very confusing for book readers because this is discussed in the books, but nobody sees it happen.
It's just like they kind of made it up.
But there's a big part of that scene. And it's funny too, because everyone remembers this episode as like one of those great battle episodes, but honestly, like 40 minutes of the episode or more has nothing to do with this.
And
it's like all of 20 minutes of insanity at the end. And the battle's pretty insane, but the most insane thing is that the Night King sort of like raises his arms and all the dead from the battle, you know, their eyes start glowing and they all rise up. But there's a scene where all of a sudden, like, stuff goes nuts, and these people start, the White Walkers and the Whites start coming over a wall. Now, was that
Ugh.
the wall?
No, I think it was like the like construction of Hardhome. Like when the when the Night's King like holds his arms out, like, come at me, bro. He's like on the top of this cliff, and
Right.
so I think it's like a more like an ice cliff of where they are, and not the wall. I mean, the wall is 700 feet high.
Good point.
Like they're going to need a lot of White Walkers, and I think that would be. In season 7, I kind of anticipate, we'll see a lot of glimpses at what the White Walkers are doing, of forming their own army and
that could be really
getting their own shit together. Yeah, because we've seen so like not enough with them. That was always like the first time I saw them in the book, I was like, I want to know more about this. Like, and it's kind of hard because they're not mindless. I mean, the zombie ones are, but obviously the Night King and his lieutenants or his generals or whatever, they have a purpose and understand each other. It would be really interesting to see a little bit more of them and kind of like why they're doing this and who he is and how they make the other White Walkers, because obviously he can control the dead, but then we see in season 4 with Craster's baby that he just touched a living baby and turned it into a White Walker, or have whatever, the blue eyes little baby. So I hope that we get to learn more about them before we have to watch them all get, battled. Because it's kind of like, that's the last really big missing piece of the puzzle of like, what are these things? Why are they doing this?
Grievances.
You know what? Probably they do. They're like,
let's hear them out. Let's reason with these guys.
Like, look, it's very fucking cold out here. Like, we just want to go where it's slightly warmer. Okay. Like, that's all we want.
Yeah. Look at our skin. We're desiccated.
Our bones are all showing.
I what's fascinating also about Hardhome is that there's a lot of scenes, or at least up on that cliff, you see all the lieutenants on their half dead or their undead horses, and all these Whites and White Walkers. They have this like extraordinary command of tools, and like they know to go after the obsidian. That's where John and Sam are like, get the obsidian out of that little storage house over there. John learns that his Valyrian steel sword can make them disintegrate, but they don't know how to work boats. They're like the boats are like 10 feet away from them on the shore, and they just give up.
Everyone knows boats, zombies' weaknesses. Okay, like they don't want to be a part of that.
Then why isn't The Walking Dead building like a seafaring home?
I don't know. All right. That's a good question too, and because like all these things have to be sort of solved, right? In a short amount of episodes too. Like, remember, this season will only have like 7 episodes or something instead of 10, so it's 3 less episodes than we usually get to solve all these questions. And then I think season 8 has like even less, 8 or something. Yeah, it's like 6 episodes or something. So I think it'll be a very, very fast-paced season. And the showrunners have said this too, like things that usually take 4 episodes or 2 seasons are going to happen in 10 minutes now. Like they're just going to start. Like, this is like the last season of Lost. Like the season 6 of Lost, it was like smoke monsters this thing, and like this guy's not dead, and you're all in heaven now. Done. Season out.
I think that is it's a great place to wrap up on. And I'll say, we began this by talking about what we did to prepare, and if we rewatched. And at this point, when you're listening to this on Wednesday, July 12th, you don't have enough time to watch all the episodes unless you call in sick to work.
Yeah, unless you're like a hermit and you don't need sleep.
About 14 episodes a day. You're not going to make it through the entire rewatch. So I would recommend the Storm of Spoilers podcast did a Re-Thrones, where they did one episode, 1 hour-long episode on each full season. And they do a really cool, quick recap of like, here are the important things that happened to each character. Here's who died. And then they talk about things like who their MVP of the season was and stuff like that. And that's definitely good listening. Emily, where can people find you on social media if they would like to talk to you about Game of Thrones?
If you want to yell at me about Game of Thrones or fight me about Jon's status as a Secret Targaryen, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @EmilyKelly. Todd mentioned it at the top of the show, but you can also listen to my podcast here on the There Network, Fan Theories, and that's with my partner in all things, Peter Cunin. We do that once a month, and our last one was on Game of Thrones. So if you want to catch up on a few Game of Thrones fan theories, which we cover a lot, might be beneficial and maybe a look forward to into this season. You can find that on the There Network, just as this podcast. And our next Fan Theories podcast for July will be about Harry Potter. So if you like Harry Potter as much as I do, join us for that one. That's out on July 31st.
Awesome. I think that I'm, not a Harry Potter fan, I'm actually anticipating that because I think that'll be fun to listen to and may stir my interest in.
Yeah. If you enjoy listening to me cry about fictional characters,
what are these theories you're going to discuss? No,
I just get really emotional about Harry Potter. Okay, so
cool. And we have we still have our old domains, but we made a much nicer domain that's much easier for us to tell to people, which is findusthere.org. And you can find us there on every social network as Find Us There. So go to Twitter at Find Us There and Facebook Find Us There, and findusthere.org, and you'll find all of the podcasts and everything. You can talk to me on Twitter at Hey Todd A. I will say that we will be tweeting from there and our own personal accounts. Possibly, Emily, I haven't even told you about this.
Oh.
We will always be using the hashtag Stupid Sword Chair, which is an Emily Kelly coined term for what this whole show is all about.
Game of Stupid Sword Chair.
So next week, we are going to have our first episode. This is so exciting. Our first episode of season 7. We will regroup then to talk about it. Until then, Emily, 7 blessings, and I will talk to you soon.